the Para Cave Podcast, proudly brought to you by Rubbish Removal Kings, The Corner Post, Flash Conveyancing, Parramatta Leagues Club, Wine Barrels Event Hire Sydney, and Wick Coffee, proud sponsors of the Para Cave Podcast. Are you looking to spruce up your corporate event, or wedding, or birthday? Then Wine Barrel Event Hire Sydney is the answer. They offer quality, authentic wine barrels direct from the Barossa Valley for hire or sale in Sydney and surrounding suburbs. They also hire out half wine barrel eskies, barrel bars and bar stools for short or long-term hire in Sydney at a competitive price, with options to deliver all over Sydney. Make sure you check out their packages at www.winebarrelsforhire.com.au or contact them today on 0405 179 577. Mention the podcast as well, the Para Cave Podcast, and you will receive a 10% discount. Wine Barrel Event Hire Sydney, proud sponsors of the Para Cave Podcast.
Let's go! Welcome back to another show. Hi, how are ya? It's the Para Cave Podcast coming at ya. Turn it up, feel the vibe, blue and gold, step inside the cave. Yeah. Easy try in the corner. Here's your host, Troy Warner, coming to you live from the world famous Para Cave.
Hi, how are ya? Welcome back to another episode of the Para Cave Podcast, and this is the NRL Round review, and round 2 is done and dusted. A full round, we're back into it, full rounds from here on in. Look, there was some great games, there were some dud games, there was some low points, there were some high scores, a lot of teams in the 40s, including Parramatta, our team. And when I say our team, my co-host Ben joins me for this round review. Ben, how was your weekend of footy?
Yeah, mate, my weekend of footy was absolutely fantastic. And I think if the viewers haven't listened into the Para Game Review podcast, they'll be a little bit confused about why I sound the way that I do. So I did lose my voice celebrating the massive win over the Broncos. I have been slowly recovering over the weekend. I think it's a little bit of laryngitis. So lucky to be here, just as much as I am happy to be here.
Well, I watched the game at Parramatta Leagues Club, and I could say that I wasn't probably yelling out as much as you were at your local, so probably why I have my voice. But let's quickly get into that game. As you mentioned, let's direct everyone to the review podcast of the Eels and Broncos. That's a much more in-depth review of this game, but let's quickly touch on this game. 72 points scored in this game, a lot of points. For Parramatta fans, Kel Matualangi scored a double, Isaiah Iongi scored a double. For Broncos fans, Reece Walsh scored a double but had an unhappy night. The interesting thing that come out of this game, I guess, for Brisbane-wise, is the fact that they are 0-2, and it is the most points they have had scored against them in history, premiership history. That is also the defending premiers as well, I should say. But also, Adam Reynolds, it's a very interesting one, this one, because he went off with a rib injury. Now, he was also on Fox Sports, I think, on the Friday night. So the night after the game, the Thursday night game, I thought he wouldn't have travelled down to Sydney for that. So I'm not 100% sure as to how serious that is. Have you heard anything about that Adam Reynolds injury?
I haven't heard anything about that injury myself, but What I would say to that point that you've just made is it probably does make a little bit of sense that he did travel down to Sydney because he's probably got a specialist that he's been seeing for many years that he trusts, and maybe he's got a doctor or a GP or somebody within his circles, medical wise, that he probably trusts a little bit more than what he's got up there at Brisbane. So if he's a little bit concerned about whatever is going on, I'm sure he would have been happy to travel down to get that all sorted out. So I'm sure he's not short of a quid. I'm sure he can afford a plane ticket, and I'm sure Fox paid handsomely to have him on the night as well. So I wouldn't worry too much about that one. I wouldn't really read into it.
Yeah, no, fair enough. Fair enough. I think Gordon Tallis on Triple M said that he'd probably stay away from Sydney if he had a rib injury, but you could be right there. But the Broncos, they are struggling. 0 from 2, and they've got a big game against the Melbourne Storm this week in Melbourne. So
15th as well.
Yeah,
15th on the ladder. When was the last time you saw him that low?
Well, yeah, I'm just trying to think. Maybe their wooden spoon year. When was that? 2021? Was it?
2020, wasn't it?
2020, maybe? Yeah, I can't remember.
Yeah.
Anyway, probably their wooden spoon year that they were down that low, but they've got a big game against the Melbourne Storm this week down in Melbourne, so they could potentially be 0 from 3. But let's get to the highlight, the Eels. They really turned around their loss from the Melbourne Storm to beat the Premiers. Couple of standout performers, Kilma Tuolangi, Isaiah Iongi, Jonah Pezzett had his best game for the club, albeit he's only played 2 games for Parramatta, but he really shone against his next club that he's going to in 2027.
Yeah, 100%, and it's definitely not hard for him to have a best game for Parramatta because the only other example that we had of him was absolutely awful. So so it was good to see him bounce back, and good to see him bounce back in a big way. There was a lot of interesting thoughts that we had on that over on the Match Review podcast. So if anybody wants to hear my thoughts on that one, I encourage them to go listen to it there.
Right, well, let's get to the other action in the NRL during the week, and Friday the 13th, so could have been superstitious for some people, but the first game of that week, or that day, was the Warriors taking on the Raiders over in New Zealand, and the Warriors put another 40-point game on. They beat the Raiders 40 points to 6. In front of a very healthy crowd, 23,067, who braved some treacherous conditions. And also the Warriors, they had a bit of misfortune before the game, losing Kurt Capewell in the warm-up. And they also lost Chanel Harris-Tavita as well to a HIA for the game. But 7 tries to 1. Canberra scored the first try through KO Weeks, and it was a pretty easy try. And you thought maybe, okay, Canberra have gone over there and are going to do well. They beat them over there last year, but the Warriors, they ended up running away with it in that second half.
Yeah, 100% they did. And I am in all sorts over this at the moment because I'm sitting here looking at the ladder live as we stand, and I'm going to pose the question to you before we get into the full review of this match. I know it's only round 2 and we shouldn't ladder watch in round 2, but having a look at the form guide at the moment and the teams that are sort of coming out as the ones to watch, is this what you expected? Because my ladder currently looks a whole lot different to what I had predicted just a few weeks ago before we started the season.
Well, no. Newcastle 2 from 2. Obviously, the Tigers had the bye round 1, but they got the victory, which we'll get into a little bit later. So they're 4th and 5th. Penrith, well, we knew what we get out of Penrith. Melbourne, yeah, we probably thought they'd be right up there. The Warriors, probably not as high as what they were, but look, this is 2 games in a row now that they've played in New Zealand in front of big crowds. And look, it was 6-6 at half time. So, yeah, I was going to ask you actually as well. Are the Warriors the real deal this season, or is it just the fact that they've played 2 games at home and got victories over, some pretty credible opponents in the Roosters and the Raiders?
Yeah, look, we did sort of touch on this briefly in our season preview podcast, which will be another great one to go back and listen to. if any of the listeners are interested in that one. We did touch on this with the Warriors, that they are a team that one year they can come out and look like a legitimate premiership threat, and then the next year they can come out and look like they're just making up the numbers. So it looks like this year they've come out with a bang. They've come out and stamped their authority on the competition. And for me, I know Melbourne put on a big score last week, and I know the full-time score this week was pretty for them as well. But I actually think the Warriors are the form team of the competition right now, and I'd really hate to be coming up against them right now.
Yes, we'll get into it later, the games for next week, but they've got a crackerjack against Newcastle, who are undefeated at the moment. But
they're also looking pretty Newcastle, you know. They're another team that's really taken me by surprise too.
Yeah, definitely. Probably hasn't taken Lincoln from the Nighter podcast by surprise at all, but
he'll be happy to say I told you so. 100% he would.
Oh yes, definitely. Shout out to Lincoln. Great
I definitely wrote them off. I'll happily stand here and say I was wrong about them, because they've looked brilliant, the Newcastle Knights.
That's right, but it is only round 2, and we'll get into their game a little bit later. But all eyes were on Allianz Stadium on Friday night. The Book of Feuds game, Roosters v Rabbitohs, 41,424. Alex Johnston was 2 tries away from breaking the record. So all eyes were on that left edge of South Sydney. The Roosters, they had other ideas. They got out to an early lead. They got 2 tries through Daly Cherry Evans and Daniel Tupou, who is a pretty good try scorer himself. I believe he's got 184 tries. But all eyes were on Alex Johnston, and he scored his first try to equal the record in the 30th minute. It was a pretty handy sort of flick pass from Latrell Mitchell, I think it was, to Alex Johnston, and he still had a little bit of work to do, but scored in the corner. But then it just all went hectic. Pretty much straight after they came out after half time, David Fafita, he's taken a hit up. He's got to offload. The ball's gone out to Latrell. Latrell's in space. Alex Johnston, the professional, has kept himself on side, knew when to put the speed on. He's got the ball from Latrell, and he was never gonna not score that try. I think I heard him say that his biggest worry was him dropping the ball over the try line. But a player who scored 212 tries, I don't think he would have done that. And then we just saw those amazing scenes on the field.
Yeah, wouldn't it have been funny if he just turned around over the try line and passed it back to Latrell?
Yeah, I don't think that was happening.
Yeah, no, look, great scenes. Those we mentioned it on our match preview. Our weekly preview podcast last week as well. That we definitely hoped that everybody would get out there and have a good time and have a safe time. And thankfully, there was only, I believe, 2 cases out of the thousands of people that ran onto the field that did actually get arrested for being idiots, and serves them right for being idiots. I think there was one guy that got into a fight with security and ended up getting carted away, and then maybe another similar story. So 2 out of the many thousands that ran on is a pretty good strike rate, I think. And it was really great to see everybody out there safe, smart, not being idiots. They were there for the moment. They made the moment what it was, and I think it was really great of the NRL to allow that to happen, because if we had some ugly scenes to follow that, I don't think it would have been sort of the same kind of incredible moment that it ended up being. But another great touch as well was them giving him his golden number, and I think it was like some gold script text on the front to symbolize his try scoring record on his jersey. I thought that was a really nice touch. Obviously, he got to keep the match ball as well. That got encased in glass for him as well. First Plex or whatever it is. That was really great to see as well. But one question I'm going to pose to you here, and it's a question that's come up a lot in the aftermath of this game, because they did lose this game. Do you think the moment took too much away from the game itself?
No, I don't think so. I think because we always knew that this was going to happen, even though the NRL and Allianz Stadium said, no, we don't want you to run onto the field. So we always knew it was going to happen. How it would interfere with the game, we did not know. I mean, obviously there was a
Well,
20.
clearly they had an idea because they sort of had it all set up that he would receive his jersey in the dressing rooms and whatnot. So clearly they did have some kind of an idea of how they were going to manage it and handle it. But the question I'm more so posing to you is, do you think that the big stoppage was a distraction for the Rabbitohs and sort of maybe let the Roosters get ahead?
No, I don't think so because we saw the scenes in the dressing room of Wayne Bennett. Not so much laying down the law, but he was obviously talking to his team and saying, "Look, this has happened. We've got I think it was at about a 20-minute delay. I think with getting the people off the field." So we did see Wayne in the sheds on the cameras, basically talking to his team. So he knew how to handle that situation. I just, I don't know. I don't know. Look, to be honest with you, I went to bed after the record-breaking try anyway, so I was only staying up for that. I was buggered that day, so I was just staying up for that. And if the try happened in the 79th minute, well, then I would have had to have stayed up and watched the whole game. But look, I tipped the Roosters in this game anyway, so look, it may have taken a little bit out of the Rabbitohs, and some have said, yeah, bit of momentum perhaps of them scoring that try right after half time to get them back into the game. So yeah, look, it might have, but I don't think it would have been the reason why they lost the game. The one thing that I do like out of this game is when the people did run on the field, there was a Roosters fan who ran on first, I think, in a 1990, I'm going to say 1995 jumper or something around that vintage Samsung
I can
sponsored.
tell you exactly what it is because I've had them in the corner post. It's the 1997 jersey.
Okay, there you go,
Oh,
1997
sorry.
Sam.
Sorry. I think it might be 1998. I'm pretty sure it's their anniversary season, so 1998 would probably make sense.
Oh, I think this one was an original because the sponsor was a bit faded, the Samsung sponsorship on the back. But the funny part about it is the security guard, I think maybe because he was one of the first to get there, the security guard ran up to him and tried to grab him away, and I guess he was fighting back, and then all of a sudden the security guard's just gone, oh, look, bugger it, everyone else is coming on, go and enjoy yourself. So, yeah, look, it was amazing scenes, and look, something that we'll never see again. Well, I won't say never see again because you just never know. But you know, I'm 47, and I think this record was for about 50 odd years or so. So I'll be a very, very old man if this happens again. So good
I
on.
wouldn't exactly say that, Troy, because there is a fella that plays on the left wing for Parramatta that's kind of close to that record as well. So if he manages, I think. I think one thing that has sort of gotten lost in all of the fanfare for Alex this week is the fact that for the last sort of couple of years at South Sydney, he has sort of been on the outer. So it looks like his career is sort of wrapping up more than it is, more than it, I guess, has been over the past. So there was a very, very serious moment a few years ago there where he was actually getting shot around to other teams, including Parramatta. So I don't know how safe Alex is in that Rabbitohs squad when he's not chasing the record, if you know what I mean. And I definitely think that Josh Adekar's got at least another 3 or 4 years in him at Parramatta. So if Josh can keep scoring sort of 20 odd tries a year that he's on the current pace that he's at, he actually was going to catch up to him pretty quickly. So I wouldn't definitely rule out somebody else catching up to that record pretty soon.
Well, we'll just have to wait and see. I mean, I would love for Josh Adokar to do it at Parramatta. Obviously, being a Parramatta fan and him playing for Parramatta, but yeah, he's got a lot of work to do. Unfortunately, I think Alex will be a bunny for life, and I think he'll be playing on for another couple of years to go. But look, congratulations to Alex Johnston, massive record. He's a very humble player and humble guy, and. Yeah, so congratulations to him. That one's done and dusted now. The record breaking So that's done and dusted. So the Rabbitohs can keep on now, continue on throughout the season. The first game on Super Saturday was the Tigers taking on the Cowboys. It was the Tigers' first game of the season, having the bye in round number 1. They got the victory, 44 points to 16. Were the Tigers good, or the Cowboys did the Cowboys have the Las Vegas hangover?
I think I am happy to say what you kind of avoided saying just then, and the Cowboys were bad. I definitely look. I think it's half a dozen of one and six of the other. So it's a bit of a muchness in this one. The Tigers came out as I expected them to come out. I knew that they were going to be fit and ready and ready to fire in this game. And the Cowboys definitely made the Vegas loss look like it was justified. So but we spoke a little bit off air about particularly about Newcastle, the Cowboys, and a couple of the other sides there where we weren't so sure if they were good. The other two sides, I should say, sorry, were Manly and the Raiders. So a couple of teams that have been involved with each other over the last couple of weeks. We weren't quite sure if the Cowboys and Manly were bad, or if the Knights and well, I guess the Tigers now as well were good. So it's sort of been hard to get a read on it this year because of the way that a couple of those teams have come out of the bat. And I think the Tigers just came out, turned on, and ready to go.
Yeah, well, definitely they were fresh and ready to go after having the week off in round number 1, and we saw some footage during the week of Benji Marshall saying, look, if you don't want to be here, there's the door. We want people to be here who want to play for the jersey, and they certainly did that, 28-2 at half-time, and really went on with it in the second half. Good crowd, 17,367. It was a great summer's day. Oh, sorry, not summer's day, autumn day in Sydney, and they call it the 8th wonder of the world, so I'm sure all Tigers fans will want their games to be played at Leichhardt Oval, that is for sure. The second game on Super Saturday saw the Dragons take on the Melbourne Storm down there at Wollongong WIN Stadium. I always think that the Dragons play better down at Wollongong for some reason, and look, for most of the game there, it looked like the Dragons were giving it to the Storm. The Storm got out to a quick lead, 12-0, and the Dragons, they ended up coming back, and when Clint Gutherson scored his try in the corner, they had a bit of momentum, and I think they hit the lead in that game.
Yeah. I did definitely think that the scoreline far outweighed what the actual game looked like. It seemed like sort of the Dragons may have just sort of run out a bit of steam at the end, and the Storm put it on the way that we all know that they can, the way that was quite evident to us the previous week. But yeah, look, the Dragons definitely looked really good, and it's really disappointing for them because they currently sit 14th on the ladder, and they definitely, in the two games that they've played this year, they've played like a team that deserves to be in the top maybe 5 or 6 of the ladder. So that they've put on two really, really good performances, and they've ended up 14th on the ladder for it. So it's a bit of a slap in the face for a club that's sort of trying to rise its way back up the ladder. But in saying that, they might be 0-2 here, but they've had two really great performances to build upon with. So it's kind of probably the wrong time of the year for them to build upon it because they've got us next week, and I really don't want a hot and ready Dragons side coming up against us.
Yeah, well, they do have a new halves combination, and we do know that halves combinations are they need time to work together, and sometimes you see them get off to a great start and win games together, but other times it takes a while to take a hold. But look, Melbourne Storm, they've unearthed another fullback. Look, he's played for a couple of seasons now, but this is his first full-time season at fullback. But Suafalongo, how good is he going? 3 tries, and 2 of them were in the space of 3 minutes. His 3 tries were in 12 minutes, so they know how to unearth a fullback, don't they, Melbourne Storm?
They know how to unearth a player on any part of the pitch, and that's what's so annoying about the Melbourne Storm. They seem to just be this consistent talent factory that never seems to shut down. The talent factory seems to be open over Christmas. It seems to be open over the weekends. It doesn't take a bank holiday. It's just consistently on, and it's consistently pumping out these great young players. So that's why a lot of us sort of I guess journalists and influencers or whatever we call ourselves, a lot of us guys seem to never write off the Storm, and it always seems to be really boring when we all do a season preview and we've all got Melbourne up in the top four, and then somebody will come along and say, Melbourne will fall off this year, and you just know that that's them just sort of trying to be a shock jock and get a little bit of engagement, because they never bloody seem to do it.
Yeah, I know. I certainly hear you on that one. And Suafalongo definitely has that speed and scored some brilliant tries in that game against the Dragons. And look, another player in the next game who did play some first grade last year, but this year as well, he is scoring tries, and that's Tom Jenkins for the Panthers, who they got the victory over over the Sharks at a sold-out Carrington Park in Bathurst. When I say sold out, it was only 12,000 there, but nevertheless, country footy, it was sold out. Big crowd there, Panthers home game. 4-1. The Panthers beat the Sharks. Again, the Panthers scored 26 points. They only let in one try, and that was after a game and a half. Of football. So 137 minutes of football without letting in a point. So they are certainly starting off much, much better than last season.
Yeah, look, I definitely thought it was sort of strange watching this game, because there was times over this game where I thought that the Sharks actually were in the game and they actually had a chance to win. And I think we did pin this as our game of the week potentially as well, because of how good the Sharks looked the week prior. But Penrith never seemed to sort of relinquish control, even though they sort of let the Sharks in little moments here and there as well. It seemed like they sort of had a solid game plan, and they just went out there and executed that game plan. And just Cronulla never sort of seemed to fire a proper dangerous shot at them. So it was really, really, I guess, a strange game to watch, because you could sense something was happening at all times, but it was only really Penrith that managed to provide any of that. I'm actually quite surprised, honestly, that we're sitting here with Penrith having actually conceded a try, because as likely as the Sharks looked to potentially win that game, it was also just as likely that Penrith are going to shut them out as well. So it's quite a strange game to watch, that one.
Yeah, I think it's back to the drawing board for the Sharks, and look, quality opponents this week. I'm not saying that the Titans weren't, but they certainly gave them a touch-up the week before. So this was a real test for the Sharks, and unfortunately they couldn't get away with that victory, and the Panthers, they march on again for another win. Super Sunday. No, you can't call it Super Sunday because you got Super Saturday. So I guess Sunday afternoon football. Now, for the first few weeks of the competition, there is the 6:15 p.m. game. We'll get into that one shortly. But the first game at 4:05 p.m. was the Sea Eagles taking on the Knights. Big build up to this game. Obviously, everyone talks about the '97 grand final and Spud versus Chief and all that, and this and that. But look, the Knights, they came away from Vegas a victor. The Sea Eagles, they went down to the Raiders by 1 point. So many people tipped the Manly Sea Eagles, including myself, to bounce back and get a victory, but they were pretty poor.
Yeah, look, Manly, I touched on this a little bit earlier. Manly are probably... there's been a couple of bad performances from a couple of prominent sides already this year, but Manly have got to be probably my most disappointing side so far of this season. I've tipped them both weeks, and both weeks they've just come out and fired absolute blanks. They looked really good for the first sort of 15 minutes against Canberra, and then they managed to let that game slip. They looked really good for a little period here against Newcastle as well, and they managed to let that game slip as well. So I don't know what to think of Manly at the moment. I personally feel like they've got a very good squad, but they're just not seeming to gel together right now, and they're not seeming to, I guess, focus in these games. It seems like it's not necessarily the whole game that they're losing. It's just individual moments that are all piling up one on top of the other and causing these sort of more major moments to occur. There was a couple of times watching that game which were quite frustrating, even as a Parramatta fan watching Manly, quite frustrating to watch them because they do everything right and then they just seem to do something wrong and it turns into points at the other side of the field. So I don't really know what to make of them at the moment, and I'm not sure if they even know what to make of themselves.
Yeah, no, the Newcastle, they got off to a flyer. Greg Marzu scored a try in the first minute, and then Dom Young got a second one. Got his first try of the afternoon. And then Manly, they did fight back pretty well. Jamal Fogarty scored a great try. Tom Trbojevic, he scored a great try running over the top of Phoenix Crossland. And you thought, yeah, potentially Manly are back here in this game. But look, all the damage was done in the first half. 30 points to 10 by Newcastle. However, in that first half, they did lose two of their superstar players, Kalen Ponga and Dylan Brown. Dylan Brown to a knee injury, Kalen to a hamstring injury, and you thought, well, maybe if those two are out of the game, you thought that Manly could go on with this and have a really good shot at winning it, especially with those two superstar players out. Hamoli Olakuatu got a try for Manly straight after half-time, and you thought, okay, that's pretty good. They needed that to get back into it, but there was nothing from them afterwards. And look, Newcastle, they stood up and got away with the victory.
Yeah. Look, I was sitting down at the pub watching this one, having a nice dinner down there, and every time I sort of looked up and thought maybe it's time to go, maybe we can get back and get sort of ready for our shows tonight, and every time I sort of looked up at Manly, I thought, nah, you know what, they're looking good here. Maybe we'll sort of stick around here and see if they can make the comeback, and then they just do something else to ruin it. So all credit to this one has to go to Newcastle, and I will make a public apology to all the Newcastle fans out there. I did have you guys running last this year, but I definitely don't feel like that's going to be the case now. So I hope, truly hope that they do turn it around this year and they do get close to finals footy, because I think rugby league's in a very good place when the Newcastle Knights play finals footy.
We'll just have to wait and see. It's a long competition, but so far they are doing well, 2 from 2, and Manly are 0 from 2. As a Parramatta fan, I like to see Manly 0 from 2. The final game of the round, the 6:15 game, as I mentioned before, was the Dolphins taking on the Titans, an all-Queensland affair up at Suncorp Stadium. Now, this first half of this game was a bit of a fizzer, I must admit. It was 8-0 to the Titans. The Dolphins, they went into this game, I think, as favourites, going down.
I think they were clear favourites for this one.
Well, yeah, the Titans got smacked the week before by the Sharks. The Dolphins, they got beat by the Rabbitohs, but at least they scored 30 points. But and I did tip the Dolphins. But in the second half, the Dolphins ended up coming back and ended up actually winning the game, 18 points to 14. Now, what do you make of this game?
Oh, mate, this game was an absolute stinker. This didn't deserve to have that all-important final spot on the Sunday roster, because this game just there was nothing good to say about this game. Honestly, it was a side like the Dolphins, for example, that I thought was going to be really, really good this year. I guess they're another example of what we've been talking about a little bit over this episode. A side that I really thought was going to be a lot better this year than what they've sort of shown already at this point. I really thought they would come out and have had their defense fixed up, and they clearly haven't done that. I know they've only conceded 14 points to the Titans here, but it's a miracle that the Titans have 14 points in them at all. So for the Dolphins to sort of make them look as good as they looked in this game, it's showing some really grim signs about their season overall and where their defense is at compared to last year, because we all know how well that this team can attack, but they've got to add the defense in there to be able to sort of help them win more games and get themselves into finals footy. And right now I don't see it. I don't I don't see for both of these sides really. I don't see where the Titans could get their next win, and I don't see where the Dolphins could really sort of come out and make a big statement against anybody else, because this was the game that they needed to come out and make that statement and put on 50, 60 points and minimize the points against to show us that they're serious about footy, and they just didn't do it.
Well, we'll get to the Titans' next victory a little bit later because I think it might happen next week. I don't know who to tip out of that one. But anyway, at the end of the round, we'll go through the ladder at the moment, and the Storm, they sit pretty on top of that ladder. In first place at the moment, followed by the Warriors, Panthers, Knights, Tigers, Bulldogs, who had the bye this weekend. The Sharks and the Rabbitohs round out the top 8. Just sitting out of the 8 is the Dolphins, Roosters, Raiders. Our Eels sit in 12th spot at the moment. Which is
not for long.
Well, no, not for long, hopefully, and that was a much better result than last weekend when we were talking. The Sea Eagles, Dragons, Broncos, Cowboys, and Titans. Now, you pointed out to me, have a look at the last 3 teams on the ladder. 3 out of the 4 Queensland teams are down the bottom, and not 3 that you thought out of the 4 would be down there. So that is very interesting there. Going into next week's games, I should say. And look, we say it every week. There is always some crackers of games, there's some duds of games, but look, there really is some crackers of some games. Kicks off on Thursday, the Raiders and Bulldogs down in Canberra. Friday night, 6pm. Now, usually the Friday 6pm games are a bit rough to watch, but these 2 games on Friday are going to be crackers to watch. Roosters and the Panthers. That will be.
I actually think just on the note of the Roosters and Panthers game, I actually think that the bookies have dudded the Roosters a little bit here. They've got them at $2.41 at the moment, which I think is probably fresh off a massive derby win for them, and fresh off ruining the Alex Johnston show. You think they'd be coming into this game with a head full of confidence and wanting to be the first team to knock Penrith off this year. I think that's a little bit rough for them.
Well, probably because Penrith have won 2 out of 2, so and looking pretty. So maybe that's why those Roosters odds are a bit out. But the second game,
don't get me wrong, I'm definitely tipping the Panthers, but I just think that that's a little bit closer than what they're suggesting.
Yeah, it's only early days. That might get a bit closer towards the end of the week. The next game on Friday is the Storm taking on the Broncos down at Amy Park. Good luck, Broncos. We've got Super Saturday, the Knights and the Warriors at Newcastle. 2 of the informed teams. That'll be a great one. Saturday, 5:30, the Dolphins travel to Cronulla to play them. 2 rivals on Saturday, 7:35pm. The Rabbitohs take on the Tigers. That is a Rabbitohs home game, and that is at Polytech Stadium in Gosford. I do
love seeing games in Gosford.
Yes, well, I do believe that the Women's Asian Cup is still going, I think. So that could potentially be wrapping up soon, and I think Accor Stadium is being used as some of the finals venues for that. So that's probably the reason why the Rabbitohs head up the M1 to Gosford. Then our game, the Eels and Dragons at CommBank Stadium, 4:05pm. That is our first home game of the year, so hoping for a big crowd. And the last game to round out round number 3. And look, I do not know how much of a viewership this game will get. It is 16th taking on 17th. It is the Cowboys versus the Titans. And if you, we were mentioning before, when will the Titans get their next victory? I think potentially this could be it. This could be a bit of a toss the coin game, I think. But that rounds out the round, so I'm not too sure if I'll probably watch it, or I'll probably be coming home from Parramatta, so I may actually accidentally miss a lot of this game. But and Manly have the bye as well, so much needed for them.
Yeah, look, one thing I do find interesting about both of those Sunday matches is Parramatta are actually favoured by the bookies for for the game against the Dragons, and they're pretty heavy favourites, to be honest. It's the first time this year that we have been favourites heading into a match, which is a nice feeling to be able to have. It's always good when the so-called experts think that we're the team on top and we're the team to beat. So maybe a little bit of a target on our back there. And the other interesting thing here is that we are absolutely going to be guaranteed a Queensland team wins a game again next week, because unless the Cowboys and Titans somehow manage to draw, which I wouldn't put it past them, we're gonna get a Queensland team in the victory circle. So one of those teams is going to unjustly move up the ladder.
Now, just quickly to round out this round 2 review, some rugby league news that came out, I think, yesterday during the late in the afternoon was Bronson Cherry from the Bulldogs has asked for an immediate release. Apparently, Phil Gould doesn't know anything about it. Apparently, he had breakfast with him this morning, actually, and wanted to discuss it, but... Look, it's all a bit of a throw up in the air sort of thing about as to what's happening. You won't be able to believe it until you actually see it. But, apparently he's asked for an immediate release because apparently he's not happy at playing at right centre. He wants to play right centre. But, of course, you've got Stephen Crichton at that left-hand centre position. Does this sound a bit like Zach Lomax all over again, not playing in the position that you want to play?
Not necessarily. I think this is more so to do with him getting dropped. I think that's sort of where his grievance is a little bit more. Like he's obviously been playing some half decent footy over the last sort of 12 months or so, but then he comes out into this season and all of a sudden he's had a half decent off season and all of a sudden they want to drop him. So I can sort of understand where he's at. I think we saw a little bit of this last year around this time, where we saw a lot of players on the move, players such as Dylan Walker and Lachlan Galvin, where they were sort of unhappy in their environments and they requested those moves. So I think this will just be, I guess Lomax is the first, but I guess this will just sort of be the first of maybe a few moves that'll happen for sure over the coming months.
Those moves that you spoke of, though, they were halfway throughout the year, not in round 2. And for the fact that, because he's been dropped, I mean, shouldn't that mean that he should go back and work harder at training and then try and earn his spot back and find out the reason why he's been dropped, not just have sour grapes and say, oh, look, I want out of the club. I've been dropped, so I want to get out of the club.
Yeah, well, look, Gus's response to this tells me a lot, and we have seen this a lot with the Bulldogs over the last few years as well, where players have sort of left the club and come out with some horror stories. The fact that Gus seems to think that we're all so stupid as punters that we would believe that he has no idea what's going on there, and then he would then go out and say, well, I've scheduled a breakfast with him and his manager tomorrow morning, his manager of whom is currently banned from being able to talk to anybody within the NRL. It's just a sort of a big slap in the face from the Bulldogs. And I think that sort of maybe sums up a little bit of why he wants to leave that environment. I think there maybe is a little bit more going on there than what we know and what we may ever know. And I think maybe he's just sort of tired of that.
Yeah, well, we'll just have to wait and see what happens here in terms of what's going to happen with that one. But that was only pretty much the only sort of big news that I guess came out of round number 2. Nothing else that I can think of. Obviously, the Alex Johnston breaking the record, that overtakes this Bronson Cherry news. But if there's any news that comes out in week number 3, we'll let you know in the week 3 review. Ben, thank you very much for joining me once again for another round of rugby league, and hope you look forward to round number 3. The season is well and truly underway.
Yes, I am absolutely excited for it. And one other thing that I want to say just before we get off the air as well, another thing that I'm very excited for, and I know a fair few of my fellow fans will be excited for, a little bit of basketball action with the Sydney Kings making it into the championship series to go and fight for another championship crown. They have currently won 13 games in a row, and they have won 19 of their last 21 matches. So they are absolutely red hot favourites heading into the championship series. And I think at the time of recording this, we're still not sure who they're going to verse in the final series. But I guarantee you, I will make it to at least a few of those games and hopefully see them hoist the trophy.
Well, glad you chucked in a bit of basketball in a rugby league podcast, but we'll have to chuck out our well wishes to the Sydney Kings. That is for sure. I guess we live in Sydney, so got to get behind the home team. And look, who knows? Maybe in the off season we might do a sports podcast. Who knows? But thank you very much, Ben. We will catch up very soon during the week, no doubt, for our previews of the games and the NRL round as well.
Thanks for listening to another